Hello everyone, my name is Dries Vervoort. I'm digital media artist at Luxion, and I will be presenting today's Keyshot 6 Master Series webinar, the fifth one, and today we'll be focusing on workflow improvements in Keyshot 6. First, I'd like to talk about import options for models into Keyshot that have been improved in Keyshot 6. I'll do this with a SolidWorks model. So this is a sort of a old scaled steam engine, a traction engine. So this is a model consisting of multiple sub-assemblies, and each assembly has some other sub-assemblies and multiple parts, and these parts have been assigned a simple color. So if I open one, then we don't really have any materials here, we just have some color assignments on different faces and bodies. So now we'll have a look how we can now import this this assembly into Keyshot. So if we open a new Keyshot session, then I'll find my model. I will, in this case, simply drag and drop the top assembly in my Keyshot scene, and this gives me the import options for my model. Let's quickly go through the import options because some aspects of them have been changed going from Keyshot 5 to 6. Of course, as always, we can choose how we center the model. We can snap the model to ground or keep the original location. And you may notice by this overview that we don't have the automatic sizing anymore. So every time you now import a model, be it a SolidWorks model or a Creo model or whatever model you are importing, it will always respect the actual size that you made the model in. Of course, we can specify the up orientation, which for SolidWorks models is Y up. I leave these settings alone for now. We have the possibility with CAD models to refine, change the quality of the mesh of the tessellation. For CAD models like SolidWorks, STEP, or any other CAD format where we can read the NURBS data, we can import those as well. So it's helpful if you want to render very smooth curves or just the actual geometry itself. It will have an impact on performance, so performance will be a bit worse compared to polygon rendering. But the thing I want to focus on now, which is probably the biggest improvement or change versus Keyshot 5, is this section for materials and structure. And I want to talk about this because it might look or seem a bit cryptic at first. So you have the option to group by material, and then there's a drop down to change the grouping to object. Then we have a checkbox for separate materials by part. Actually, the way you would traditionally import a SolidWorks model, it would actually default to group by object. And if I do that for my assembly, then it will actually import just like in Keyshot 5. show it. So if this model is imported, it should respect in my scene tree my original model structure as I had it here inside SolidWorks. This might take a while because it's a fairly large assembly. So with the option group by object, if I now expand my model, you can see that I have the exact same model structure as I have in SolidWorks. Another nice improvement over Keyshot 5 is that now, even though we have different parts here, for instance, but they share the same color. But if we now change the color on one part, these materials are actually linked. So it's much easier to sort of work with shared materials across a big model now in Keyshot 6. So now I will show the difference in behavior if you change the import options for the grouping. And I've made my preparation here. So here I have a scene, which is the result as we had it just before. So this is the assembly imported with group by object. But we can also import the same model, and instead of choosing just group by object, we can toggle this separate materials by part checkbox. And that's what I've done here. So this is imported with group by material and a check for separate materials by part. And if we now change one part's color, you will notice that only that selected part changes color and the others stay unaffected. So what has happened here? If we look at the model structure, oh, this is the wrong scene actually. So should have picked this one. So this is group by object and separate materials by part. Again, if I change one part, the others stay unaffected. And if we look at the scene tree, then we can see we still have the same structure in our model, and we still have all the subassemblies and part structure as we had in SolidWorks. But now each material name, as we can see here, is sort of appended with the part name. So even though, for instance, if we take, for example, these two parts, they share the same color in SolidWorks. So we see here the original material name, color 816353, but they have a different part name appended. So even though these different materials, these different parts share the same color in SolidWorks, by importing them with the separate materials by part, you actually get separated materials. So now you can define for each part a different material. So obviously a side effect of this is that your materials list is going to be very, very long because each different part, each bold will have a different color. If you then take a look at the previous scene, where we didn't check the separate by parts checkbox, then you can see that the material list is much shorter, because it just uses the materials as, or the colors as defined in your CAD tool. Then we can look at the group by material option. So this is a scene where I imported my assembly with the option to group by material. And now if we have a look at our scene structure, you can see that we have only just a few parts now, and our whole assembly structure has been flattened into these subparts. So if we now select this tank as we previously did, you can see that actually all parts that are green are selected as well. So if we now right click on this tank and show only, then you can see that all parts that we're sharing the same color in SolidWorks have been merged into a single part. And this is true for all the different colors. So if I check this wheel, then you will notice that all the red parts, even though they are not physically joined, so if I show only this one, then you can see that even though these are not touching or actually connected, they will still be contained in the same part. So if you want to keep your scene very compact and very sort of simple, then this is a good way to import your models. It's also good to know that even though you import it like this, you can still split stuff out. So if you have Keyshot Pro, then you can right-click on a piece of geometry and edit geometry. So even though all my parts are contained into one object, I can still split them out with the geometry editor. So if I want to have these wheels in separate objects, I can still do that by basically selecting these. Oh, wait. Separate objects. So I could still split these out into different objects. So I could select all of these. Not sure what's happening here. Let me see. Yeah. So now I've split them out into different subparts, and now I have my different parts back. One thing to note is that if you import with group by material, then all your original part names will be lost, and instead the part names of your model here inside Keyshot will just be the material or color names that you had in your CAD tool. So here, for instance, this part is called color 26, 26, 26. So it should be a gray part, I guess. Or this. So that's one thing to note if you want to import with that option. Then finally, we have the combination of, should pick another one, group by material and with the check for separate materials by part. And if we now take a look at the scene structure, if we select a part, it will just select a single part, and now it will actually flatten the whole assembly into one giant list of parts. So there will be no subparts, no sub-assemblies, just a single sort of block of parts. And what you see here is that now you do have the original part name, and it appends the the color or the material name to the at the end of the part name. So if you now change a color, then it will behave the same way as group by object with this separate materials by part option checked. But the difference is that you now have this flat structure. So yeah, that's all there is to say about the new import options. Next up, I would like to cover the new and improved move tool we have in Keyshot 6. So I have this. Yeah.
Before you move on to the next subject, there was a question that I think would be beneficial for everyone to hear, and that is, what exactly does the accurate tessellation checkbox do in the import dialog?
Let me see. Perhaps I can show with a simple model. No previews, okay. Which one will I import? This seems to be a nice example. Worm gear. So I'll drag this model into Keyshot, and I'll leave it like it is now. The default options, import, and then I will import it again, but this time check accurate tessellation, and I will add it to the scene. So now I have this one, which is accurate. Let me move this one to the side. And to see the actual tessellation, I will change the material to wireframe, which can be found here under special materials. And I will apply the same to my other model, and now you can see that the change is not very dramatically different, but you can see some changes. For instance, this is the accurate one here with the accurate option checked, and here you see the one, the regular import. So you can see there are some changes in how it subdivides yeah, basically your CAD data. And I would say the difference is that with the accurate mode, it tries to create more of a uniform mesh. I'm not sure if you have anything to add about that, yourself, Rex?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It attempts to make all of the triangles relatively the same size. Um, so you can see that there in the example. It's a very subtle difference, and in most cases, you won't really notice when you have materials applied, especially if you're working at a higher tessellation value. Um, so I just suggest that checking the accurate tessellation checkbox. I believe it can also improve performance a little bit.
I actually always default to just having it on. And most of the times I even import the NURBS data as well. Just because, yeah, you never know when it will come in handy. It doesn't hurt to have it in your scene. So,
Cool. All right, thank you.
so next up are the improvements to the move tool. So as before, yeah, let's just, what I want to do here is to get these things, these wine tools out of my set box, and I will position them here on the ground. Let me first add perhaps a ground plane. And so what I'll do is I'll click here in real time, but I want my whole model, and I click here. Let's click corkscrew, and I'll go to the position tab and enable the move tool. And you notice that the move tool itself has been updated. Uh, Before, it could be kind of tricky to select the different handles for rotation and translation, but now you can see we added a gap between the rotation handles to allow the translation handles to protrude, so you can much more easily select the different handles, and especially the translation handle. Also, the scale sort of handles have been swapped to allow for easier selection. And you'll also notice that you can now toggle the different handles. So if, for instance, you only want to translate, you can just enable the translate mode, and you will only have these handles. But for now, I'll enable all of them. And you'll notice that we have this new option here to select a pivot point. I will not handle this right now, so I'll just focus on the other options here. So what I want to do is to get this out, perhaps angle this a bit, like this. So, and now I want to put this object to touch my ground. And before, I would have to, in Keyshot 5, I would have to sort of eyeball my display, my position, because I've added a ground here. If I now enable clip geometry below ground, that would help as well, because I could actually see when my object was protruding the ground, but still it would be kind of fiddly. What we can do now is to simply hit this snap to ground button. And that will just, with the click of a button, snap my object to the ground. I think that's a very, very handy addition we made there. I could do this for every object here. So I have this wine color, which I will also just move. And let me put it right here. And again, snap to ground. Very easy, very fast. And I will do the same for this this aerator. So I will again move it like this, snap to ground. Let's just leave this one in the box, and then we have this foil cutter, and we want to move this as well. But perhaps we, for some reason, we don't want to put this one on the ground, but perhaps on top of this object. So what we can do is I will move my camera so I can see straight on top of this object, and I will put this one so it covers it. And what we can do now is, instead of clicking snap to ground, we can hit snap to lower object. Oh, that didn't work quite as well as I expected.
It's possible, Dries, that the foil cutter is a little close because it determines the bounds by the actual bounding box. So if the bounding
Yeah,
box is larger or intersects the part below it, then that could be causing the issue.
yeah, makes sense.
And a good way to reference that is in the geometry view. You can show, you can change the view to show the bounding box, and you can also use the move tool inside of the geometry view.
Let me just try again then. So, to lower object now. Actually, I have a different example I could show for this. Not quite sure why this isn't working, but I'll have, for instance, this one, which is a collection of the same boxes. And if for instance, I have this box, this is a scene without materials, obviously. So if I have this box and I want to put it on top of this box, I can drag it like this. So see, like this. If I now hit snap to lower object, then it will actually place itself nicely on top of this box. Again, it should work most of the time. Perhaps I made a tiny error in this model. We'll have to, dig into it. So that's one side of the improvements to the move tool that we have. I'm going to focus now on this this corkscrew, because now you can see that it is sort of collapsed, and what I want is to rotate this this piece around this point, and then the screw itself around its own attachment point. So what I'll do in that case is to select the part, which is this one, that I want to. You can see the pivot for the screw itself, but I will first rotate this cap. So I will right click it, move part, and in Keyshot 5 it would have looked something like this. So the only way you could rotate a model is around the center. So when you rotate your model, so you wanted to have this angle, then you would have to drag these move handles as well and sort of eyeball it in the right position. If you then wanted to increase the angle again, then you would have to redo these adjustments again. So it would be very fiddly. Now with Keyshot 6, if we again move the part, we can actually here specify a pivot point. So if I click the Pick Pivot Point button, I have this selection dialog, and here I can actually let me see. I can actually select the object I want to be my pivot. So if I now click OK, then you notice that my Move tool repositions to the new selection. And if I now move my handle, you can see that I have the exact rotation that I want. And let's just quickly repeat that for this this screw. So I'm going to move again, pick the pivot, which is going to be this tiny axle. It will move, and here I can make the rotation again. So it's much faster now that you can actually specify a custom pivot point for the Move tool. Another thing I want to talk about is pivots for animations. And again, I'll open this this scene that I opened previously, and I have this animation where I open the lid of my of this box. Let me now delete these animations and create them from scratch. So let me dock this one. Yeah. So what I want to do is to apply an animation to this top lid. So this whole top needs to pivot around these hinges. So I'll select the top part, go to animation by right-clicking, and apply a rotation animation. And as you notice, even if I change some of the parameters, you can see that it's not quite right. Even if I check original local as axis, I can adjust the angle again. You can see that there's something not right in this scene. And if I go to View, Show Coordinate Legend, you can see that my axes are actually totally misaligned with regards to my parts. So you can see that yeah, I cannot get it right away. So and even if I pick a pivot point and select the hinge, even that is not helping me because the axis itself is wrong. So in that case, what I'll do is to add a custom object, and I will add geometry a cylinder. Here is my cylinder. Let me move it out here like so, and I will change the angle to align it. Let's try something. Perhaps make it longer. And now I will use my Move tool to sort of align it with my hinges. So this looks sort of okay. I could spend some more time getting this exactly right, but this will do for this demo purpose. And now, if I click my animation and go to the pivot section again, if I now pick a pivot point and select either in this list or in real time this cylinder, you will see here highlighted the axis of rotation. So, and then I will have to change some settings again. And by pivoting around Y with original local selected as the axis orientation, you can see that now my rotation is along the right axis. And what's new in Keyshot 6 is this option for the pivot point object axis. So if I disable this one, then you will notice that it does not respect the pivot of the object selected. And that's the way that the animation would behave in Keyshot 5. So in Keyshot 6, we have this option to enable the pivot point object axis, which means that now your rotation is respecting the axis of this helper object. So even though you can imagine this is a scene like a sort of a, you can imagine that you got from a client very last minute a very rough set of data, and it could look something like this where the axes are all wrong, but even though your axis could be sort of offset, you can still get the right animations by using this new pivot point object. And this brings me to another point. So obviously we don't want to render this imported object. So what we would do in Keyshot 5 is to hide the cylinder, and my animation would still work, but if for some reason we hide and then show oh no, it's in a different group. Say we want, yeah, if we want this pivot point to move along with my box assembly, it of course needs to be in the same group. So let me put this one here in the same group, and then we hide this one. So you can see my animation works. So if you now hide this and show it again, then my cylinder will turn up again. Now what's new in Keyshot 6 is we can right click an object and we can lock parts and groups. So we can now have the option to lock or hide and lock. And if we hide and lock, then it will be hidden. And if we then show and hide, hide and show again, let me see, something's up. So if this cylinder to hide and lock, and I have this old one here. So if you now hide and show this one, then you can see that my cylinder object stays hidden. And the way to get it back is to right click on a locked part and select unlock, and now we can toggle the visibility again. So that's a nice improvement we made to animations and just scene tree management in general with the option to lock. I would like to talk a bit about scene sets as well. So let me get this one. So let's say we have this scene set, this state of the scene, and say we are happy with this view, and we create a scene set, which is a Keyshot Pro feature. So I right-click Scene Set in my Scene tab and click Add Scene Set, and I will call this Open Box, and I will use this camera that I predefined. And now I create another scene set, and I have a model of a glass saved somewhere, so I will use perhaps the same camera, and I will go to my glass model. So if I drag and drop this Keyshot scene of my glass into my current scene, then I can import, add to scene. I will not import cameras, and that's all okay. So now I have this glass. I will position it here like this, and then I'll make so now I have two scene sets. So if I toggle them, you can see that in my open box scene I have my original state of my scene, and in my glass scene set I have my box and the glass I added. Let me call this one glass. Let me check my other scenes. I have a cheese model and a chopping board. So I'm going to add a new scene set, which I will be calling box and cheese, perhaps. No, let me start from my open box scene. So whatever is active by double clicking or by right clicking, make scene set active, is going to be the basis for the new scene set. So I want my open box scene set to be the basis of my new one, and I will call this box with cheese, and I pick again this camera, and let me drag in first of all a chopping board. So again, not importing cameras, add the scene. I'm adding this one. Now I have this chopping board, and I will move it around. Not like that. Like this. And now I'll grab my cheese, importing, and I will click and move my cheese model. And let me try again this snap functionality. So I will rotate this one so that it sort of fits on this chopping board. And with these cheeses floating, I will hit the snap to lower object, and now cheese hits the top surface of the, or at least the top edge of the bounding box of the chopping board. So, and I will make just quickly a new camera, save it, and I will assign my new camera to the new scene set with the cheese. So now if I toggle the scene sets, you can see I have different scene states. But say I want to have the glass from this scene set in my box with cheese scene set, I can do that now as well. So I will open and make active this scene set. And by right-clicking on glass, I now in Keyshot 6 have the option to copy, to scene set. And the scene set I want to copy to is the box with cheese. So if I now go back to my box with cheese scene set, you can see that the glass is here now as well. So that's a very nice way of getting stuff from other scene sets of different scene states into into other scene sets. Another option with regards to a scene set that we added is to save out scene sets as a scene. Say we are happy with this scene set and we want to share it with a Keyshot user that has no Pro license, so just the Keyshot HD license. Previously it would be kind of problematic because the scene sets are not accessible for Keyshot HD users, but say we want to save or share this scene set with a Keyshot HD user, what we can do now is go to File, Save Active Scene Set, and that will save the active scene set, so the one with the blue scene set icon. It will save that scene set into a different scene. So if we call this box with cheese, then we have this new scene here. And if we now open it, we just have a single scene, the single default scene set. If you now want to share all the resources with all the textures with an HD user, you could simply save the scene as a package. Yeah, like this. And then you can be sure that the user that you're sending this to has all the assets as intended in your original scene set. Then something else as a final topic for today, just quickly touching on, is the new support for multi-layered PSDs. So I have this scene here, and I made some render layers. So as I click some geometry, you can see that you get a flyout here for a render layer. And I created several render layers here. So I have wood, inlay, clasp, rubber, and chrome. So the way I created this, and let me just remove the rubber. So you have these parts here where you have rubber components. And I want to put them on a different render layer so that when I render my images, these parts will have a separate image or a separate layer. So the way I do that is by clicking in real time while in the scene tree, in the scene tab, and here in the render layer, I will click the add render button or right click and add new layer, and that will give me a new layer, and I will right click and rename this one to rubber, and then I will select the other parts. I can simply multi-select and then check rubber as well. So, and that's the way I assigned the inlay parts to the inlay render layers, and for the other render layers, it's the same kind of approach. So if you go to the render options now, in render output, we made some changes here as well as to how things are organized. But if you want to render out the render layers, you simply check this all render layers option. And we could also check the passes that we want to include if we need clown passes to have easier selections in Photoshop, for instance, or we need a depth pass. But new here is, as you can see, the add to PSD. So if we select a PSD format, for instance, PSD 32-bit, we can select add to PSD. And what this will do is render all the passes and all the render layers, as we have them here, into a single Photoshop PSD file as separate layers. And I actually already pre-rendered this one, so this is the result of rendering to PSD. And if I open that file, you will notice here that I have all my layers available. So I have the sort of the beauty pass, the beauty render, which also contains, if I go to layer mask from transparency, it also contains the alpha channel. I have my depth pass, my geometric normal pass, my clown pass, as well as all my render layers. So all my specified layers have been rendered as a transparent layer and put into a Photoshop file. So now, if I want to change the color of this wood, for instance, I can select a layer, add an adjustment layer for hue saturation, and if I now change the color here, it will only affect this render layer. So this is a very nice way of just improving the workflow, because previously you could also render all these passes and layers, but they would be separate files and you would have to put them into a PSD document manually. So now with the new option to add all this stuff to a PSD, I think you get a nice improvement to your workflow if you are compositing images or changing colors after rendering. So yeah, I think that covers today's topics. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
There's no questions at the moment, but I have something maybe you can cover, and then give people some time to think of questions. One item that you didn't mention in the Move tool was the Snap to Pivot option.
Yeah.
So I actually find that useful as a little trick to quickly move one object into the location of another. So let's say you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Rex, sorry. Can I just show a scene where I actually used it today? So
Sure.
I got this. At least I thought I had. Let me just find it. Just loading the scene. So this is an interior scene, and let me just quickly hide these ones. will enter into performance mode. Say, yeah, I have this interior scene, and you can see these pendant lights. And these currently, as I imported them, have no light object in them. So if I wanted to add a light object here, what I could do is add a sphere that will give me a sphere, tiny sphere right here. So I will increase the scale. So previously what I would have to do in Keyshot 5 is sort of, yeah, try to match the position of that light, for instance. But what I can do is to pick a pivot point and then select this lampshade. And if I select this one, hit OK, then it will move the pivot or the move widget to that location. And if I now snap to pivot, then it moves the object right inside the lampshade. So that's I found a very neat way of using the snap to pivot. So again, here, this first button, the snap to pivot, to align objects to each other. So if I now go to materials, edit material, and make this one an area light, and perhaps change the intensity and go out of the performance mode, then you can see that I now have some light in my lampshade.
Very cool.
So
yeah, I also find it helpful. Let's say you have a variation of your product that you want to import into your scene. You can also use that just to move the new variation into the general place of the original one.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, there's no more questions, so can wrap it up.
Okay. Thanks everyone for attending this webinar. We still have one more to go in this Keyshot 6 Master Series, and that one is planned for February the 4th. So there will be a few weeks gap in between this one and the next one. So I hope to see you then as well. Bye.
All right, thank you.